قالك سباس دلفينجان بكردي دموي بس بلام زور بخوش حالم دواي تقريبا دصل كونفرنسك لكردستان بالروابة. I'm so honored to moderate this roundtable with the wonderful voices of the representative of the NGOs and government and United Nations, and also the experts and senior experts and specialists in this panel to talk about the needs of the YazIdI survivors today, and also the objectives and visions that we have in the third panel of this conference, which is very important, and I'm very, very happy to moderate. It was not planned, actually, I was a speaker, but Dr. Naram, my very, very dear friend, she couldn't come, and so I have honored to replace her and to moderate this very nice roundtable. Firstly, I present myself. I'm Sheyda Hissami. I'm the General Director of a French organization based in France, in Iraq, in Yemen. And we are working in conflict zone with women by the education program, specifically in media and communication. I have a story with the YazIdI community, specifically when on 2014, I had an assignment with UNICEF before founding our organization. I met one of the first sexual survivors. I start by this story that I want to share with you. It's a story that made me and make us to create the voice of YazIdI women to talk about themselves. It was in the camp, and they told me that this is one of the first YazIdI survivors came back to the camp. I didn't want to go and to talk with her. It was very difficult for me because how I can express. And in that time, I was producer for a documentary film with the children, with UNICEF. Finally, I have decided to go and to see this young girl, just 15 years old. And when I came to the tent, very dark place, I saw a very, very sadness girl in this darkness. I had my camera with me and my staff. And when I wanted just to say hello, she told me, no, don't come in. And I told her, wow, why you don't want that I'm coming? In Kurdish, I told her. She told me, I don't want to see journalists. I don't want to talk about my story. It was very difficult for me because originally I'm a journalist. It's very difficult to understand why she don't want to meet a journalist. I asked her why. She told me, because the journalist is coming, they take our stories. They translate it in many languages. We don't know what they talk about us. And we stay here and we will die in this darkness. So it was the moment that I have received a very, very heavy message that, yes, we should create the voice of YazIdI women by journalism. And we should take care of the women and survivors by the media and ethics. So I'm very happy to continue this vision and to talk about the needs and the support that the YazIdI survivors, they need. After 10 years, a generation, with firstly, Madame Tanya Gily. She's co-founder and leading the SEED Foundation with 20 years of experience in humanitarian programming, conflict resolution, and women's representation. Tanya, you served Iraq as a member of the democratically elected Council of Representatives, and you continue to advocate for women's rights during your program with SEED Foundation. It's very important to know about your programs, and also what do you think about the needs and the support that we should focus on, and to go and continue our discussion with very, very beautiful guests that we have. So very quickly, Mukesh Kapila. Mukesh Kapila is an expert in humanitarian affairs, conflict and security, global health, and international development, with extensive experience in human rights and diplomacy. He is professor in the University of Global Health and Humanitarian Affairs at the University of Manchester and senior advisor to the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean. The third guest, it's Madame Tammy Ames. She is representative the government of Canada and the programs of Canada in Erbil. And so it will be very, very useful for us to know about the international institutions, specifically Canada, to talk about the programs that you have. And in the last, we are going to United Nations, which is very, very important to know about the programs of UN. So it will be through Madame Marie Oniwa. She is the Senior Women's Protection Advisor at UNME Human Rights Office in Erbil. We are so, so happy. So I'm going very quickly with Tanya. Please, Tanya, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. And it is an honor to be here. And as you said, that since the morning, we've been hearing everybody talking about the last 10 years and what has happened. The use of the word victim. And I think this is where we really need to make a change. It's not just about there are a lot of victims, but again, we have to make sure that we are helping those that are victims to become survivors and to ensure that they are contributing members of society. Since ISIS's invasion in Iraq and, with their genocidal campaign, which, by the way, to this date, there was a lot of talk about other countries and other states that have recognized what ISIS did as a genocide, but Iraq has yet to recognize what happened as a genocidal campaign. That in itself is a question that we need to ask. And I wish I had asked it in the previous panel, but this is one of those things that we have to kind of pause and take a look at that, and take a look at. But I'm going to start the session by zooming out a bit, looking at the landscape of available support for survivors and examining how it has been and continues to be shaped by both internal and external dynamics. Over the last 10 years, actors and stakeholders at every level, including multilateral entities like the United Nations and the European Union, the governments of Iraq, the Kurdistan region, and numerous donor countries, and both international and national NGOs, have attempted to respond to the damage caused by ISIS. But the process has not been simple or straightforward. It is simply important to realize that every episode of violent conflict contributes to state fragility, increases the likelihood of reoccurrence, and can set a country back decades economically, politically, and socially. Iraq has a long history of upheaval. As we heard in the previous panel, there was talk about all the genocidal campaigns, all the wars that we had seen in this country, whether it's internal, whether it's external. We have seen many of those things, but these incidents, they repeatedly interrupted the state building process and impeded the development of properly resourced institutions and resilient systems. Even without these factors, recovery in the aftermath of genocide is a particularly complex and multi-layered challenge for any nation, often bringing with it intergenerational trauma, a crisis of trust in the state, community militarization, reinforced social divisions, and more. Leveraging a coordinated and effective response to survivor needs in this context has been immensely challenging. For most of the past 10 years, in the absence of a cohesive national strategy for addressing the impact of the genocide, support services were largely provided on an individual, ad hoc basis by humanitarian and protection actors. So organizations such as yourself,
Yes.
SEED, and others, we have been working with survivors directly. Available services were limited in terms of quantity, quality, and accessibility. Specialized, targeted interventions to meet the unique needs of specific survivor groups, such as survivors of conflict-related sexual violence, or those taken captive and exploited as child soldiers, who require innovative, evidence-based, and human-centered programming to support reintegration, were lacking, and they continue to be lacking. And protection actors who deliver comprehensive long-term services struggle to meet the high demand for care. and not just the high demand, but also the level of complexity of the need of the survivors has been has been quite difficult. So, let me give you a very small example. As an organization, we provide case management, mental health, legal services, etc. That one of the things is with mental health, especially if you've been traumatized, it takes years. We cannot just give somebody 20 sessions and say, okay, you can move on. It doesn't work like that. It has to be an ongoing process. And there has to be follow-up, and also there has to be more time dedicated to this. But of course, COVID-19 as well affected what can be done and how services can be provided. And it actually increased the protection risks, exacerbated disparities, and diminished available resources for those in need. There are many other factors these and many other factors prolonged the humanitarian crisis and complicated the prospect of recovery. Despite this, the dissolution of the UN-led cluster system in 2022, the conclusion of the UNITAD mandate this month, and the impending closure of remaining displacement camps have signified an end to the humanitarian file in Iraq. But many survivors of genocide, particularly those living in protracted displacement in camps and informal settlements, remain in a state of vulnerability, without clarity about where they will go and what will be available in terms of ongoing support. And again, we heard this morning when they were talking about how things are in Shingal in terms of the rebuilding efforts and what's available to the survivors. And our survivors continue, and every survivor continues to have extensive unmet needs for safety and security. Physical and psychological rehabilitation services, compensation for devastating personal and property loss, closure, justice, and viable pathways to economic independence through education and livelihood support. With the 10-year, we actually co-authored a report called 10 Demands 10 Years After the Genocide, where we worked with YazIdI and other organizations and GM Foundation in collaboration with C4JR. So please do look at that report. It's on the C4JR website and it's linked on their X as well. But addressing these multifaceted needs for those at home and abroad is crucial for the prospect of healing, reintegration, and a dignified life in the aftermath of immeasurable harm. The passage of the YazIdI Survivors Law in 2021 was a key turning point in the response to survivors and represents the single most significant development of the past decade in terms of available support. The law, which was designed in consultation with survivor communities, establishes a state-sponsored reparations program that includes both material and symbolic measures to respond to those in need for compensation, livelihoods, housing, medical and psychological care, justice, education, recognition and commemoration, and more. At the time of its passage, it was widely celebrated, both locally and internationally, as an important milestone in Iraq's recovery. Over the past 2 years, considerable progress has been made towards implementation of the YSL. Nearly 2,000 survivors have been approved for reparations and are receiving their monthly salaries, and also, which has made some of their lives better and also allowed them to leave the camps where they have been, or they felt that they could not leave. The General Directorate of Survival Affairs is also gradually expanding its work into the satisfaction of other reparations measures. So, recently they had given out plots of land for residential land in Shingal and Lafar for survivors, announced an empowerment initiative to support capacity building and access livelihoods, conducted research in other country contexts to support the development of comprehensive rehabilitation services, and announcing last month an online registration form where families can file cases on missing and abducted persons. Nevertheless, the process of implementation has not been without its challenges, and gaps remain. Continued efforts and attention is required to troubleshoot process barriers and ensure that all recognized survivor groups can equitably access the reparations program. Continued expansion is required to ensure that all promised reparations measures reach survivors in need. And continued innovation is required to adopt the application of an appeals process for survivors abroad. In addition to the promises of support made by the government of Iraq within the Yazidi survivor law, today we heard a couple of times, whether it was from Dr. Dindar Zibari and others, that the KRG has made promises of its own, announcing a monthly financial aid program for roughly 3,500 Yazidi survivors. But the precise details I'm not aware of, and I don't think, and it hasn't been clear. I don't know if anybody can go talk a little more in depth about that. But these recent government initiatives are promising. However, international aid continues to diminish and international actors depart from Iraq and the Kurdistan region. It will become increasingly important for the government of Iraq and the KRI to make good on their promises to survivors. Visionary leadership and strong coordination is needed from both parties in order to stabilize Shingal, identify durable solutions to displacement, satisfy the demand for justice, ensure the complementary of aid programs and mitigate duplication, and leverage an effective, comprehensive, and long-term response to survivors' needs in the aftermath of genocide. At the same time, it is also critically important for our allies in the international community to remain engaged. Remember that the work is not over yet. And just as we are sitting here today to talk about the genocide of the Yazidis, so people do not forget, so we can continue to work and provide the services that are required, and the survivors are getting the support that they need. I hope that we can all work together, not just as local actors, but with the international community as well, to leverage an effective response to meet the needs of survivors and contribute to larger recovery of those communities. And at the end,
Just
I just
one
want to
minute.
say,
Yeah.
I just want to say at the end that,
Yeah.
you know, hearing survivors like Rosa today really, and the information that she's putting forward, you know, every story is unique and every story will continue to be different. And we have to look at each case on its own, and not to make sure, you know, not to cubbyhole the different cases that we hear from the survivors and the survivor families. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this very, very detailed overview of your organization and your program, and also to have a focus of the needs today, and also the vision and perspective of that you presented. Thank you so much. Maybe if you have time, it's good to go in the details about your programs and the techniques that you use in your workshops, and also specifically about the psychological support that you are doing. So we are going to Mukesh. I had this honor to meet you since yesterday. So I'm very, very excited to hear from you, because yesterday we talked, and you talk about the genocide, and also how we can recognize the genocide, and also these details that we start together. So as a third panel that we are, and our focus on the needs and the support that we should do by the victims. So it's the floor is you, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much indeed. It's a privilege to be here. And I don't mean that in just in polite terms. I mean that this is my return to this region and this country after more than 30 years. And to be honest, I did not want to come back before. It's because my own trauma, and I wasn't the person against whom genocide has been done, but I was in the British government, one of the first officials to come in during Saddam Hussein's time, when the Kurds were being rushed up the mountaintops in the middle of winter. And what I saw in Halabja, for example, in the aftermath of the Saddam Hussein's chemical war, was enough to drive me away from Iraq for nearly 3 decades. And it's only your invitation that has brought me back, because who wants to return to such a horribly traumatized place? Mm-hmm. And here I'm talking about my trauma, not your trauma. Mm-hmm. That is my first point. Trauma is something that where the victim, so-called, the survivor, the perpetrator, and the bystander, they all share in some form or the other. And it's something to remember when you devise strategies around how to manage post-genocide situation. But let me share some reflections from my experiences elsewhere, because in my career in the UN, International Red Cross, and in government, I've been to every single genocide. I've been in Srebrenica, I've been in Cambodia, I've been in Darfur, I've been in Rwanda, and one or two other places which I've got wiped out in my memory. That's why I'm so old and gray. It's all these experiences. I used to have dark hair at one time, but once you start visiting, this came during the Rwanda genocide, by the way, the gray hair. And what have I learned, which is of relevance here? The first thing to remember is that whatever happened here is not a unique experience. Genocides have happened in all cultures, at all epochs of history, and in all continents, and among all people. So before you get too arrogant, let me put that in inverted commas, but your special experience, and you have a right to that, because every experience is unique. Don't forget that exactly similar or worse things have happened elsewhere as well. So I don't know if this is some kind of comfort also, that what's happened here is part of some kind of universal human experience where a bunch of bad people do something horrible to a bunch of ordinary and innocent people. And it happens everywhere. It's happened way back in history before the term was invented. And ever since the term genocide was invented, we seem to use the term more and more in every conflict and war that is going on. So that's number one. The number two thing I learned is that no genocide in history has ever been prevented. And that should bring us, to all the academics and so on, it should bring us a degree of humility in this business. We have never prevented a genocide in history. Understand that. Because once you understand that, then you become much more realistic about what you can do in terms of using an experience in defining a future, so that you don't become a victim of your experience, a prisoner of your past, but a builder of a future. Knowing, my third point, once a society has tasted the special blood of genocide, that society is permanently afflicted and addicted. Means it's like an alcoholic. Once you're an alcoholic, and even if you give up alcohol, you will always remain an alcoholic for the rest of time. Similarly, when a society has tasted genocide once, at some time, then that society is always prone to future genocide. So if you talk about genocide prevention, which is my main preoccupation, then you have to understand that what happened with the YazIdI could happen again. It could happen again to them, it could happen to other minorities or elsewhere. This is why societies like Germany spend so much effort in trying to continue with Holocaust education and so on, because they know that once the evil of genocide is introduced in a society, no matter how the society changes and how many decades pass and how much development you have and how much education you have, that virus is permanently installed. And it's nothing to do with education and development. If you look at history, most of the genocides have been committed by well-educated people, and these are educational elites. So development is needed, education is needed, all that totally agree with. But understand that the YazIdI genocide will never be over, because it's not about finding the last missing YazIdI. It's about ensuring that the evil ideology does not happen again in society. So that's my point. Now, coming to the actual issue of support for survivors, I think in this audience, I don't need to speak much, because you're all experts on social and all the things that needs to happen. But I'll just confine myself to 2 or 3 points. Firstly, in my experience, we, either as as a national authorities or as international organizations or as researchers or academics, we are really only at the basics of trying to understand the nature of evil. Of course, we can generalize. We can say, oh, well, these ISIS people were really terrible and everybody knows that and did these terrible things. But that is simply describing the situation. It's like saying the Nazis killed lots of Jews and they did it horribly. They tried to build all their camps. All that is good. Good, I mean, all that is, we know that. But that's simply describing what happened. That doesn't explain why. And of course, we can talk about anti-Semitism, or you can talk about racism, or you can talk about religious extremist ideology, and you can talk about all the factors that underpin an evil mindset. But it still doesn't explain the basis of the evil. And this is something that I struggle with every day in all my travels and in all my observations. I've been to, as I say, most genocide locations, either during the genocide or aside. Now, when I come to the Yazidis, you know about this more than I do. But when I go back to my own memories of 30 years ago, and then I fast forward to now, and then I go back 10 years ago, then the first thing that struck me, I was listening this morning, was I'm not surprised the Yazidi genocide happened. Why? Because what was happening in Iraq 30 years ago was so horrible and evil. Sooner or later, something like the YazIdI genocide was going to happen. This is not to excuse the perpetrators and the specificities of the actors who committed this particular crime in this particular time and age. But these things happen against an environment where evil seeds are allowed to grow. So when we look at who perpetrated these crimes, we have to look at the factors of the environment and the people existing around who will actually allow that to happen. So when we talk about accountability, which is, of course, a major theme of all genocide work, we also have to understand about the accountability of those who were sleeping or watching while all these things were happening. So it's extremely, and that's another reason for a degree of humility in this whole business. Fast forward, because time is limited. Let me now, I speak as a physician. I'm a physician by background, and I'm extremely dissatisfied with some of our approaches in either humanitarian work. And I was the head of the humanitarian department in the UK government and a humanitarian coordinator for the UN and many other roles, and of course, in the International Red Cross. Unfortunately, much of our humanitarian work we do double victimizes the survivors. Why? Because what happens is we treat people as objects of charity or as objects of pity. And again, this is part of the human condition. I mean, when you are walking down the road and someone falls down in a hole and you help them up, that's a humanitarian act. You help somebody up who's fallen down. Sometimes you say, oh, you poor person, you broke your leg, how terrible. Let me help you. Good intention, heart is good. But the immediate impact is to turn the person who's fallen on the road into a helpless victim. So all those organizations who are in the good heart trying to help Yazidis or anyone else there, because I'm trying to connect this experience with elsewhere, is please avoid patronizing these people and avoid double victimizing them. And that is to overcome that, you have to look at your operating policies and so on and so forth. That's another discussion. The second thing I'm dissatisfied by is...
Excuse me, we have the voice, it's good? The sound is good? Yes? Okay. Sorry.
The second thing I'm dissatisfied, and again I speak as a physician, is psychosocial support. I mean, one of the techniques don't work. You have counseling, and nowadays you have more modern techniques like rapid eye movement, and you have EMDR, and all these things better than I. And time is limited to discuss all that. But the fact is that when whole populations are traumatized, retail approaches to psychotherapy and counseling just don't work. One, they're not affordable. When you try to heal populations, it's not the same thing as healing individuals. And the challenge, therefore, for psychosocial supporters is how much do you prioritize the individual and how much do you prioritize the collective? I don't think we have the balance right here. It's not an either-or, by the way, but there is this kind of balance. I don't think our NGOs or our researchers are given enough attention. Corollary of that is our victim or survivor-centered approach is good. I'm all in favor of it. But corollary of that is that the psychosocial attitudes of the general population are forgotten. What makes a victim? What makes a victim is the person's own experiences, of course. But what victimizes is the attitude of society to the person who's fallen down on the road. Right? And I don't see much discussion so far today as an effort being made in Iraqi society as a whole, in Kurdistan or beyond Kurdistan, in terms of ensuring that we don't end up, in a sense, having a toxic society which want to move on. Okay, it's finished now. Let's make this law. The UN mission is finished. Let's move on. Your business is done. Make some memorial. Why don't you make some monument? And then we'll come every year. We'll make a celebration. We will put some flowers, and now we'll move on. So I think not enough is being done here. In terms of the attitude of society as a whole, including the new generation that has grown up since then.
Yeah, there is no translation.
I think I'm more or less finished.
Yeah, yeah, is it fine?
I don't think you're.
Yeah, okay.
Finally,
Yes.
in conclusion, one point. What is the purpose of victim and survivor support? And I'm not talking about kindness and humanitarian. That's taken for granted. It's about prevention. The best agents for preventing anything, the best agents for preventing diabetes are people who suffer diabetes. Okay, in conclusion, yeah, okay.
Just a moment. Is it
In
fine?
conclusion,
Yes, please go.
In conclusion, the best way we can honor the Yazidi or all the other survivors and victims of genocides around the world, one, global solidarity. If the Yazidi groups are only working for the Yazidi, then they're doing the world a disfavor.
Yeah.
And I have this frustrating conversation with elsewhere. The Darfur is only busy with Darfuris, the Rwandans are only concerned with Rwanda, and so on. And no wonder, if genocide is a divisive strategy, these things are going to happen again and again, because each of you are working in your own little countries, and your own little trauma is paralyzing you. And the second point of the conclusion is, the survivors are actually resources for future prevention, and that includes legal change. Unfortunately, the laws on genocide are made not by survivors, they're made by lawyers. Most of them only see genocide in the textbooks. So that's the new activation of the survivors, your case beneficiaries.
Yes.
Give them greater agency and power to actually change some of the paradigms behind this.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you so much, Tanya. Thank you so much, Mukesh, for this very, very nice overview through your experience and also your point of view about double victimization of the survivors is very, very important. Because we all, the actors here, the NGOs, and also all the actors in the field that they are working in the case and with the case directly, they understand how these people, the survivors, they need to power and to don't be shown as a victim. So we understand how it's important that the victims became the voice. Today we had a voice of Rosa, we were very, very happy to hear from Rosa, because we understood that she has too much to say, and for the first time today she say, I think that today I will express freely because I want to talk about my own problems. I will talk about the population and the Yazidi survivors, but I really want to talk about myself also. So this mind and to thinking about ourselves is important to be considered. We are in a zone, the conflict zone and the crisis, and the actors like the local organization, international organization, working together with governments and the international institutions is very important. So we are going to Madam Tammy Ames, if I pronounce well your name. It's wonderful to hear from you, because you represent the government of Canada and the program that you have started recently. And maybe if you can give us an overview and also a focus on your program that is started from 2023.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for inviting us. I'll be honest, Canada is a small player in Iraq. We're pretty much a small player everywhere. So I'm going to talk about something a little different. Whereas Tanya addressed direct assistance to survivors who need psychosocial help and that type of thing, maybe mine is sort of quasi-connected to what you talked about survivor-centric activities. In 2023, the Canadian government sponsored a program with Physicians for Human Rights. They're in New York, NGO. They actually were the co-Nobel Prize winners in 1997, I found out today, looking. We have a small project, 2.4 million over 3 years. And their program is on working to improve the quality, quantity, and integrity of forensic medical evidence in cases of SGBV. So this might come into the, what was it? Something with dignity. What was the other word up there? Defending dignity was it. So that's that fits into their objective. So they're trying to set up, with the help of the Medical Legal Directorate in Baghdad, and they're the national governmental bureau that oversees medical legal institutes. These are all words I'm not so familiar with, but in 17 governorates, and that includes in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. So they're working in collaboration with these two entities to develop and implement a forensic medical form that documents forensic medical evidence that will meet international standards. So if the day ever comes where you get to face your perpetrator in court, these are documents that are internationally accepted as proof of evidence. And also to strengthen the systems to support and to get more creative collaboration between the different groups, and teaching people how to collect this evidence in a way that does not re-traumatize the survivors. There are practiced, established international norms of how to work with survivors, ask questions, get evidence without making the whole situation worse again. The form they've created, it's aligned with the Istanbul Protocol, which is an international protocol on investigating and documenting sexual violence in conflict zones, and also the Murad Code, which was finalized earlier this year. So to date, the organization has trained approximately 85% of the forensic doctors in Iraq on how to use this new form. And it's going to start being implemented, the form in Baghdad, and it will gradually go nationwide by the end of 2025. So the project sort of has three objectives. One is to build systems and training the institutions that we noted to strengthen their response to crimes, and to make sure that when that national legal framework is created to prosecute those ISIS crimes, the forensic system is ready to support the process. And with ongoing coordination and communication, they're getting feedback to find out where are the disconnects, where are we finding there's a gap, and how we can make that more coherent. They're working with the Supreme Judicial Council and the Medical Legal Directorate on a practical guide to facilitate coordination between those two groups. And there's a chapter on survivor-centered best practices. It will direct judges on what questions not to ask. And they call them closed questions, like say, have you been raped? And that very much is not the way to step forward, but people are just not sensitive to that. So that's what one of their objectives is. And the third is in coordination with the YazIdI Law Directorate. They hope to conduct, they plan. I give them the money, they have to do it now, to conduct training targeting judicial professionals who receive and investigate the case files under YazIdI survivor law, as well as select staff in the Directorate for Survivors Affairs. So this training will focus on the importance of informed consent, interview skills and techniques, the importance of psychological evidence, and the unscientific nature of hymen examinations, which are quite standard here, I understand. So this is something, it's not directly that each survivor is going to see a psychologist or a doctor, but hopefully when that time comes, when they have to face a medical professional or a legal professional, it'll be done in such a manner that you don't feel that it wasn't worth the trouble. Because I can understand why you would just say, you know what, I do not want to face having my life laid out in such a terrible manner. I would rather just pretend it didn't happen and run away. And that's not what we want. We want women to come forward, women and girls, and get those people prosecuted who caused the damage. But I can understand if it's going to be as bad as what happened to you, why would you? It doesn't make sense. So hopefully by funding this organization for this particular project, we can make it a little bit easier for the survivors to come forward to speak their truth and to tell what happened to them, so that we can make sure that they get the justice they deserve. So that's it's a little different kind of touch.
Thank you so much. Yes, you have time again to talk. You are not a small. We cannot. That's a small actor. That you are a small actor. I think that we have the bigs, but acting and the result. So. Through our program, we had a beneficiary, Zina Hamo, and she benefited of the photojournalism for YazIdI girls, and she has just found a program in Lithuania to learn English language, and then she has a scholarship in Canada.
Excellent.
So she has just graduated from media and art a few months ago, and she's working right now in Canada, and she is in contact today with Sharif. So this networking is very, very important. It's meant this kind of debate and connection is very important to bring the YazIdI survivors and also the YazIdI women, that they should become the actors and to help others. But there is a very big problem that we discussed, I think, that separately together with all of you. And it's related to Zina, for example, that she is in Canada, but she's trying to bring her family. So this support of family and psychological is very, very difficult. The second thing is about the education. So I'm coming back to region and to the field. With Rose, we had some discussion together. So I asked Rose if she wants to talk again more about this subject. That when Daesh arrived and this genocide has happened, most of the girls who was just 15 or 16 years old, they didn't finish and finalize high school. So they didn't have also, when they came back, they didn't have the chance to continue and to go to high school and to finish their education. So they don't have the opportunity to go to university. One of them, for example, Rose, 8 years after, so she's liberated, she's coming back and she wants to go and to educate. She has some dreams. So she has some objective in her life. It's very important to see, it's very good and positive to see these girls that they are coming back to their life and they want to be educated and find their places. So the problem is that they cannot go to high school or do the exams because they are all in the government of Iraqi government and they should go to Mosul. To do the exams, everything. It's not possible. And it's not new that I'm saying. Maybe, Talar Khan, you know also about this problem, that it's about some years that we discuss about how we can support them. So unfortunately, today we don't have too much people from government and to respond this question, maybe here in the public after we can go. So how we can support them to go to school, to university, and to educate and to find their places. This is maybe, it's a question we should ask. I don't know if we have. No, we never.
I don't have an answer to that.
Yes, and yes, Talar Khan, what do you think?
According to the YazIdI survivor law and the reparations law that was passed, there should be, there is an article in there and says that women and girls can go back to school without there, because there is a certain restriction in terms of if you've been away for so many years, you cannot go back into the educational system. So supposedly that actually is happening, and as per the law, everybody, all the young girls and the young women and even the older women can go back to school regardless, as long as they have been deemed survivors by the directorate. Now, one of the problems, and I didn't go so much into it, yes, we have a great reparations law, but when it comes to the implementation, and I think in one of the other panels that was talked about, there's a lot of the logistics, there's a lot of the issues, their bureaucracy and so on, that is getting in the way of how the law is being interpreted.
Yep.
So I did speak to Rosa Khan, and I said that, maybe that's something we can help you with, but they should be able to. And I think this is where I said it's very important for the KRI and the government of Iraq. They need to be working very closely together. And we heard this in the other panels and before as well, that coordination is missing. Whether you're talking about justice, whether you're talking about rehabilitation, whether you're talking about any of the other aspects of it, if there isn't seriousness to really work with the YazIdI community to ensure that their needs are met, nothing is going to happen.
Yep.
And it is unfortunate. There should have been representatives from the Iraqi government, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are responsible for implementing the laws, and they are the ones who are responsible for the reparations. And it is very unfortunate to say this as well, is that the YazIdI community was marginalized even before ISIS came. So there was so many things, and whenever those areas, they were not rehabilitated properly.
Okay, so the time also, we have just 5 minutes, and I think this is the time to switch to United Nations, because so that we discussed together, Marie. And Marie Oniwa, you are the Senior Women's Protection Advisor at UNAMI and Human Rights Office in Erbil, and you are working on the implementation of United Nations Security Council resolution of conflict resolution, yes, and in Iraq. So you heard from, we are in the third session, you heard from the organizations about the governments and also the feedbacks and the overview of the experts. What do you think? How we can go to say, okay, we can be optimistic to see the good result of this program that we are doing together, to implement together, and how you see the situation.
Thank
Please.
you. First of all, thank you very much for the organizer, and also the Consulate of Canada also, and all the participants here. I think you have the commitment. Thank you. The speakers, I think you cover many aspects. I just wanted to maybe just complement something different. Rights of survivors. like some of them are here, you know, that you have the right to choose also. The right to health or mental health, or right to education, or right to legal redress, which is, we're talking about accountability. Maybe you may show up, but also you can choose. That means you don't need to talk to, for instance, media if you don't need to, you don't want to. I see some great effort made to rescuing abductees coming back. But those, maybe for 10 years, they maybe, I don't know, but they may need more time to heal. So I saw some media interviewing, which is, I hope it will be with the informed consent and with the survivor. And also, when we talk about international good practice for media or any other organization, for victims of sexual violence especially, we don't put the name or something, information or photos which are identifiable, because still maybe some perpetrators are walking around. Maybe they can be stigmatized, or, you know. So this, I just wanted to raise about that. Now, survivor-centered approach, we talk a lot about, and I think YazIdI survival law implementation, for instance. And thank you, Tammy. I met with a physician for human rights, and I heard about this initiative, and even training both federal and KRG. Yes, great. And this is exactly all the service providers, starting from medical, psychosocial, to even the Ministry of Social Affairs, to the police, justice. We need to really make sure there's a survivor-centered and trauma-informed approach, further to the specialized services. And as mentioned, that we talk about 10 years, and we can't imagine how we need to have specialized service treatment for rehabilitation. This, again, requires sort of minimum standard or the specialized training for the psychosocial support or trauma awareness and treatment. This is something I welcome the Canadian government to support this, building capacity, and that can be also phased down to the service, which will be maybe even in Shinja or Duhok. I was working in the DRC Congo, and you may know about the Panzi Hospital, and Dr. Mukwege is running. This is about how to be survivor-centered approach that would be meaning one-stop center. Usually the survivor comes to seek the medical services. But if they want to also have a psychosocial support, they can. Or they want to have a legal redress, they can, but the distance is the problem. And also stigmatization. So how to put service closer, access the referral pathway. So from medical, if they can get rehabilitated, maybe they can start speaking about their experience and documentation. They don't need to run into CJ quickly. That's another issue, we will talk about that. But, and then, so this one-stop center is supposed to have the referral pathway easy for survivors. But this is not the one model that can work. I hear YazIdI survival law implementation include the one-stop center sort of approach. The government of Iraq went to Congo to look at this center. But here, I see a bit difference. There is a YazIdI community, there is a Shia Turkmen community in Talafa, or maybe Shabak community in Bashika. If we put only one-stop center in Shinja or Senuni, they are saying, it's not easy for Shia Turkmen community to go there. First of all, they are closed community, they don't get access. So we need to have a flexibility of providing or bringing service closer. So we can have one-stop center, but also we need to really invest in the local health center so that service can be closer to the survivors. this is something we tend to forget, but this is something very important to have long-term capacity building of the government institute. But in the meantime, how to bring service closer, community-based approach. Okay, finally, I just wanted to talk about healing you mentioned about. I remember South Sudan also had, like everybody took part in a conflict and everybody's traumatized, and we talk about forensic lab, which is very important. By the way, now the hospital in Shinja, they don't have a lab. So if they have some case of rape, they have to go to either Mosul or Duhok, which is very far away. So I raised that to WHO, who supports Ministry of Health. And this is, again, another issue at Service Closer. But here, I believe I was working in Congo. It's called a mobile court. There's a court in the community where there's a mass rape case occurred. And when this is very helpful to move to the next chapter, meaning that the justice is delivered in front of the community. We have some ways to go because this domestication or legislative framework on prosecuting international crime or CRSV, conflict-related sexual violence, is still not there. And as for United Nations, Office of SRG, Sexual Violence in Conflict, team of expert rule of law, there is a model legislative provision on investigating, prosecuting conflict-related sexual violence. This is a global model, but we had this consultant worked on the legal analysis on this model for Iraq. So we, as a United Nations, we had some provided inputs on the legislative framework on investigating and prosecuting conflict-related sexual violence. This look at the different approach, human trafficking, which can maybe prosecute sexual violence, different aspects, and also what are the gaps in terms of survivor-centered approach and the facility, for instance, like a closed room. We're going to see how, building on such issues as a medical and legal team to collect the evidence, but then how we can investigate and prosecute that. And now, I think it's important to deliver justice closer to the community so we can move to the next chapter. That's a transitional justice that many are working on. So it's great to see in a third state, but delivering justice here that can send a strong message to prevent. And also some approach is that it shouldn't be the victims who are stigmatized. It should be perpetrators. So it should be pointing to the perpetrator. They should be stigmatized. So this kind of culture of impunity is the important part that this resolution is working on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marie. To finalize and conclude by this very important topic, the importance of the social justice today is needed today, and I think this is the main objective of this conference, and I hope that this conference will continue.
Yeah. But also very important is a protection of witness and victims. Like in Congo, we had a law that passed to complement. Again, we have lots of things to do that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I am going quickly directly to the public if they have some question and comments.
شكرا للحضور، شكرا للقائمين على هذا المؤتمر. سوف أبدأ من الآنسة ماري فيما يتعلق بوصمة عار التي تحاول تعليقها بالضحايا. فأنا أرى إن وصمة عار ليس بالضحايا، وإنما وصمة عار هو بالجاني، هو من قام بهذه الإبادة الجماعية، هو على تنظيم الدولة الإسلامية داعش. هاي النقطة. فيما يتعلق بالوضع الغير الطبيعي للسيد موكيش، أي وضع غير طبيعي يولد نتائج غير طبيعية. ما يعيشه الناس في المخيمات وضع غير طبيعي. الضحية ليس من نجا من مقبرة، الضحية ليس من هرب من داعش. الضحايا هم الذين يسكنون الآن منذ 10 سنوات الذين يسكنون هذه المخيمات. السؤال هو للسيد مكيش، كيف يرى الوضع النازحين بعد 10 سنوات؟ هل التسيس الموجود بهذه القضية يطول 10 سنوات أخرى؟ شكرا.
شكرا. So this is a question that I understood. I'm so sorry, my Arabic is not good. We are going. Okay, the second question. Okay, the first question, it was just I note, and I will just, you understood about the question. Yeah, so the question was about after 10 years, so what's the plan to change the life of the Yazidi? Is it correct? With IDPs, sorry. So this is first question, and please.
سلاوتان لبي من تعقيبك كما درباري بوتكاني ماريا خانو لقال تامي خان
بله
درباري دعم كردنيان سبورتي بو قربانياني براو خشكا يزيديا كان من أمد صالة طبعا بداخوا تاكو استا نحكمتي عراقي ونكو ملقاني دولتي بو ساس كردني دادقايك بو داد كردني توان باراني داعش يعني هو خالي زور قرنقة للروي ياسايو للروي دادوريو لهمان كاتا هتاكو استا حكمتي عراقي طبعا دوس خوشي لكم لهريمي كردستان كوا دادقاشي ساسكر بو دوكومنتري او بلغانو سكالاكار وشاد حال وانا بلان بداخه ولا بر ناكوكي بين حكمتي عراقي وحكمتي
بس برسالك جنابت
برسالة متعقيبة خالي زور قرنقة هو شيدا خان
توزه هواش قصبكا اگر بزهند پرس چونکه ترجمه کن علی مترجمه که بجوانی نتوانه ترجمه بکرد چونکه خیر قصه که جنابت برسالك جنابت
من تعقيبه خالك زوجرقه بحثي دعم يعني كدعمي بحثي محاكمين جنات هنا اساس كرديني دادغاير مداخه ومدى صاله هتاكو استا كيسي براو خشكي زيديا كان بتواني كي ارهاب وصف كراوه هتاكو استا وكو تواني كي اباده جماعي تواني كي ديجي مربايتي ليره بلا العراق لاني دادقاي ناوندي عراق ليه سزاكرن صدهان توان باري داعش ليه سزاكران ابوايا هما هنجيها ابوايا لبين حكمتي عراقي لقال هرمي كردستان بود ساس كردني دادقايك تايبات بتوان كاني داعش بالله مداخل كبو للروي معنويه كقرارك محكمه درشت وكو بالبشتكي ياساي يعني دادوري اعترافي او تاواننا وكو اباده جماعي زور قرنقه
زور
بالله ما تاكو اعتراف نكره ولا الرئاسه دادوري اما يعني حتى قراري نتو يقرتو كانوا كومالغاني دولتي كوا او تواني كي اباده جماعيه او قراري سياسيه براستي
اوكي زور باشا
او هليكي سياسيه وكو تعاطفك ابوايا لبدايات قراري محكمه در بكريت وكو تواني كي جينوسايد ان جا لاني كومالغاني دولتي ولاني برلماني عراق لاني زور نتو يقرتو كان كوا تواني كي جينوسايد زور سباس
اوكي سر تمام جنابت بس برسياري تدانبو بس بمعلومات يعني هذا وانا كومنتك ابو بس برسياري تدانبو
انا من كومنت تعليق وزاره من بحكمي ومن دادوري بيشوب من دادقاي بالايت وانا كاني عراق
زور باشا
دادور اسو محمد صوفي
برسيارك وربقرين فرمو برام اوي دواء بلا
شكرا جزيلا كنت استمع للترجمة العربية وعندي سؤالين للسيدة ماري وأيضا السيدة تامي فكتبت السؤالين ريت يعني قدم مشروع ما كاتبت يعني هذا أولا السؤال للسيدة تامي في ظل اعتراف كندا بالإبادة الجماعية ضد الإيزيديين كيف تبررون التأخر في اتخاذ خطوات ملموسة على المستوى الدولي لضمان محاسبة المسؤولين عن هذه الجرائم وهل تعتقدون أن كندا تلعب دورا كافيا على الساحة العالمية للدفع نحو العدالة والمساعدة الفعلية للناجين الإيزيديين أم أن الاعتراف بالإبادة الجماعية ضد الإيزيديين مجرد اعترافا رمزيا؟
Thank you so much.
أيضا سؤال آخر للسيدة ماري إذا ممكن. تحدثت عن إقامة محكمة خاصة لهذه الجرائم ولتحقيق العدالة للناجين من الإبادة الجماعية للإيزيديين. برأيك ما هي أبرز المعوقات التي تقف أمام إنشاء هذه المحكمة سواء على المستوى المحلي أو المستوى الدولي؟ وهل ترين أن هناك إرادة سياسية حقيقية لتجاوز هذه العقبات وتحقيق العدالة للإيزيديين؟ شكرا جزيلا.
Shukran jazilan. Okay, so I think 2 questions or 3 questions is for you, Tammy.
Canada's popular. Yes, we acknowledge that this was a genocide by our official designation, whatever that is. I am not a lawyer. I don't work in the legal department of my ministry. I cannot say what our how we would like to see things prosecuted in the International Criminal Court or otherwise. I can't speak to that. We do have people who have returned to Canada who are being investigated for ISIS crimes. It is a very complicated and long process in Canada, and finding the evidence is very difficult because we all know what it was like. It was chaos. It was a mess. There's no records, or not the right records. And, if we can find the right evidence, we will prosecute someone for the crimes against the Yazidis. But I believe to date, we have not prosecuted anyone, but I do know there are investigations underway. But that's about all I know. I'm not like I said, I'm not a lawyer or police officer, so I can't help.
Okay, thank you so much for your answer. Unfortunately, so we have 60 minutes, so we should close the roundtable. Thank you so much, Tanya Khan, for your participation. Thank you for your work. Thank you so much, Mr. Mukesh. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for your programs and also your passions today with us. Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Thank you for the conference and also all of the participants, and the technician also, and the translators.